The tragic legacy of inbreeding in history, power, purity, and perilous quest to preserve a pure bloodline has shaped the course of human history, particularly among royal dynasties and isolated communities. For centuries, families driven by ambition, tradition, or necessity married within their own kin, believing it would safeguard power, wealth, and prestige. Yet, this practice of inbreeding marriages between close relatives came at a devastating cost. Physical frailties, mental instability, and family trees so intertwined they defied recognition. This exploration delves into the lives of 10 women whose stories, spanning ancient Egypt to modern times, illuminate the profound and often tragic consequences of inbreeding. From queens ensnared by dynastic obsession to individuals trapped in secluded communities, their lives reveal the delicate interplay of biology and ambition, offering a sobering reflection on the human cost of preserving lineage at all costs. 1. Cleopatra II Philopator, the pinnacle of Ptolemaic purity. Cleopatra II Philopator c. 185–116 BC, a queen of Egypt's Ptolemaic dynasty, stands as the ultimate embodiment of calculated inbreeding for political power. Far from the romanticized Cleopatra VII of popular lore, Cleopatra II was a Greek Macedonian ruler whose lineage was a meticulously crafted tapestry of sibling and uncle-niece marriages. The Ptolemies, descendants of Alexander the Great's general, Ptolemy, were obsessed with maintaining a pure bloodline to solidify their divine status and political dominance in Egypt. This strategy ensured that power remained concentrated, but it came at a steep genetic price. Cleopatra's parents, Ptolemy V Epiphanes and Cleopatra Syra, were siblings, as were her grandparents, Ptolemy IV and Arsinoe III. She herself married her brother, Ptolemy VI Philometor, continuing a dynasty-long tradition of sibling unions. When Ptolemy VI died, she briefly married another brother, Ptolemy VIII, before ruling alone. Her family tree was less a branching structure than a tightly woven loop, with almost no external genetic input. Her name, derived from a rare Syrian princess Cleopatra, was one of the few hints of an outsider ever admitted into the Ptolemaic lineage. Cleopatra II was a formidable ruler, navigating civil wars, power struggles, and betrayals with remarkable resilience. She co-ruled with her brothers and later her daughter, Cleopatra III, maintaining Egypt's stability during turbulent times. Yet, her biology bore the weight of her family's relentless inbreeding. While historical records do not explicitly detail her health, the Ptolemaic dynasty's later generations suffered from physical and mental ailments, a legacy of their genetic isolation. Cleopatra's life was a paradox, a testament to the power of concentrated bloodlines and a warning of their inevitable toll. Her story, rooted in ambition and divine pretense, underscores the lengths to which dynasties would go to preserve their legacy, even at the cost of their own vitality. 2. Kimberly Colt, a modern tragedy in isolation, shifting from ancient palaces to a modern, isolated corner of Australia. Kimberly Colt, a pseudonym, represents one of the most disturbing cases of inbreeding in recent history. In the early 2000s, the Colt family, living in a remote rural area, became the focus of a shocking genetic and legal scandal. For generations, the family practiced multi-generational inbreeding, creating a close community with virtually no external genetic influence. This extreme isolation, compounded by poverty and lack of oversight, led to devastating consequences for Kimberly and her kin. Kimberly was born into an environment where siblings, cousins, and even parents and children intermarried, creating a genetic bottleneck of unprecedented severity. When authorities discovered the family's circumstances in 2012, they uncovered a web of abuse, neglect, and genetic disorders. Children, including Kimberly's, exhibited profound physical and intellectual disabilities, ranging from malformed limbs to severe cognitive impairments. Kimberly herself is considered one of the most genetically compromised individuals ever documented, her DNA reflecting the catastrophic effects of repeated inbreeding. The Colt family story is not one of royal ambition, but of human tragedy. Living in makeshift camps with little access to education or healthcare, they were effectively invisible to society until their discovery. The intervention led to multiple arrests and the removal of children from the family, but the damage was irreversible. Kimberly's life serves as a stark reminder that inbreeding's consequences are not confined to history's royal courts but can emerge in modern, marginalized communities where isolation and desperation perpetuate cycles of suffering. 3. Mummies. 317a and 317b. Ancient Egypt's silent sorrow in The Sands of Ancient Egypt. Around 1300 BCE, two infant girls, known only as mummies 317a and 317b, were born into a dynasty defined by divine kingship and sibling marriage. These stillborn daughters of Pharaoh Tutankhamun and his half-sister, Ankhesenamun, embody the tragic legacy of Egypt's 18th dynasty. The practice of sibling marriage, intended to preserve the divine bloodline of pharaohs, was a cornerstone of Egyptian royal tradition, but it carried grave genetic risks. Tutankhamun himself was the product of inbreeding, likely the son of Akhenaten, and an unidentified sister. His marriage to Ankhesenamun, his half-sister, continued this tradition, but their daughters paid the ultimate price. Discovered in Tutankhamun's tomb, the mummies of 317a and 317b revealed skeletal deformities and extreme frailty, likely the result of accumulated genetic defects. One fetus at 5 to 6 months gestation showed signs of spina bifida, while the other, at 7 to 8 months, exhibited multiple congenital anomalies. These tiny, preserved bodies are a haunting testament to the limits of divine ambition. Even pharaohs, revered as gods, could not escape the biological consequences of inbreeding. The mummy's short, unlived lives speak to a universal human tragedy, where the pursuit of purity led to sorrow preserved for millennia. 4. Maria Antonia of Austria. The Habsburgs' genetic labyrinth. Maria Antonia of Austria, 1669–1692, a lesser-known Habsburg, represents the zenith of the dynasty's inbreeding, while her uncle, Charles II of Spain, is often cited as the epitome of Habsburg genetic decline. Maria Antonia's lineage was even more entangled. Her parents, Emperor Leopold I and Margaret Teresa of Spain, were uncle and niece, and her grandparents were similarly intertwined, creating a family tree that resembled a dense, looping vine rather than a branching structure. Genetically, Maria Antonia's inbreeding was so extreme that her genetic similarity rivaled that of a child born to full siblings. Instead of the usual 16 unique great-grandparents, her ancestry collapsed into a handful of repeated names, a testament to the Habsburgs' relentless pursuit of dynastic purity. Married to Maximilian II Emanuel, Elector of Bavaria, she bore one son, Joseph Ferdinand, who was seen as a potential heir to the Spanish throne, but died at 6, likely due to genetic frailties. Maria Antonia's life was overshadowed by her uncle's notoriety, but her story is no less significant. Her brief existence, marked by loss and fragility, encapsulates the Habsburgs' tragic obsession with bloodline preservation. She stands as a silent figure at the peak of a dynasty's genetic decline, her legacy a cautionary tale of ambition, pushed to its breaking point. 5. Princess Alexia of Greece. A modern royal Princess Alexia of Greece, born 1965, bridges the fading tradition of royal intermarriage with its enduring genetic consequences. Her parents, King Constantine II of Greece and Queen Anne-Marie of Denmark, were not only royal, but closely related second cousins through one line and third cousins through another. Their 1964 marriage, one of the last significant unions between a reigning king and a royal princess, was both a political alliance and a continuation of aristocratic inbreeding. Constantine's great-grandparents were siblings, and one of his grandmothers was the sister of his great-grandfather. Anne-Marie's ancestry was equally convoluted, with multiple overlapping lineages tying her to the Danish, German, and Russian royal houses. Their 5 children, including Alexia, were thus partially inbred, much like their British counterparts. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, whose own marriage reflected similar genetic ties. Alexia has lived a relatively private life, marrying a non-royal and raising a family away from the spotlight. Yet, her story reflects the persistence of royal inbreeding into the modern era, a tradition rooted in consolidating power but fraught with hidden risks. Her lineage, while less extreme than her Habsburg predecessors, underscores how the echoes of dynastic ambition lingered into the 20th century. 6. Marie-Louise Elizabeth d'Orléans. A Life of Gothic Sorrow. Marie-Louise Elizabeth d'Orléans, 1695-1719, lived a life that reads like a Gothic novel, steeped in tragedy and dynastic duty. Born into the French royal house, her father, Philippe II, Duke of Orleans, was forced to marry his cousin, Françoise Marie de Bourbon, an illegitimate daughter of Louis XIV. This union, driven by political maneuvering, produced Marie-Louise as the eldest surviving child, destined for a life shaped by the expectations of her lineage. At 15, she was married to her cousin, Charles, Duke of Berry, continuing the cycle of close unions. The couple had 3 children, none of whom survived infancy, a tragedy likely linked to the genetic risks of their intertwined bloodlines. Overwhelmed by loss and the pressures of her role, Marie-Louise turned to alcohol as a teenager, with reports suggesting she began drinking as early as 14. Whether this was a cry for help or a means to cope with her suffocating circumstances, it marked the beginning of her decline. Marie-Louise died at 23, her body and spirit broken by the weight of her family's expectations and the genetic curse they perpetuated. Her story is a haunting reminder of how dynastic ambition can transform a life into a tale of unrelenting sorrow, where personal agency is sacrificed to the altar of lineage. 7. Maria I of Portugal. The pious Queen's Descent. Maria of Portugal, 1734-1816, known as Maria the Pious, or, to some, Maria the Troubled, lived a life marked by mental anguish and a bloodline strained by centuries of close unions. Her parents, King Joseph I of Portugal and Mariana Victoria of Spain, were part of a long tradition of Iberian royal intermarriage, the 16th such couple in their lineage. This relentless inbreeding amplified genetic risks, setting the stage for Maria's tragic reign. At 25, Maria married her uncle, Peter III, a decision driven by the need to preserve the Braganza dynasty's purity. Of their 6 children, only 3 survived childhood, likely due to genetic complications. As Maria aged, her mental health deteriorated, with bouts of paranoia, melancholy, and religious obsession rendering her unfit to rule by 1792. Her son, John VI, assumed regency, while Maria's condition worsened, exacerbated by political upheaval and personal loss, including the deaths of her husband and eldest son. Maria's story is one of royalty undone not by external enemies, but by the invisible toll of genetic repetition. Her piety and devotion could not shield her from the unraveling of her mind, a poignant example of how dynastic ambition can exact a devastating personal cost. 8. Lorraine Whittaker. Our modern tragedy in rural America. Not all stories of inbreeding are confined to royal courts. Lorraine Whittaker, a member of the infamous Whittaker family from rural West Virginia, represents a modern tragedy born of isolation and intermarriage. Documented in the 2004 film The Whittakers, a family portrait, the Whittakers became a case study in the genetic fallout of multi-generational inbreeding in a small, secluded community. Lorraine, one of the most inbred individuals in recent history, is the mother of Timmy Whittaker, often cited as possibly the most genetically compromised person alive today. The family's isolation, geographic, social, and cultural, created a closed genetic loop, with cousins and siblings marrying over generations. The results were devastating. Physical deformities, intellectual disabilities, and chronic health issues plagued the family, including Lorraine and her children. Their story is not one of royal ambition, but of human vulnerability. Poverty, lack of education, and societal neglect allowed the Whittakers' inbreeding to persist unchecked, echoing the genetic risks of ancient dynasties in a modern context. Lorraine's life serves as a sobering reminder that the consequences of inbreeding can emerge in hidden corners of the world today. 9. Marie-Louise of Austria, a Habsburg pawn. Marie-Louise of Austria, 1791-1847, was born into the Habsburg dynasty, one of Europe's most deeply inbred royal houses. Her parents, Archduke Francis, later Holy Roman Emperor Francis II, and Maria Theresa of Naples and Sicily, were double first cousins, sharing both sets of grandparents. This was no anomaly. The Habsburgs had long favored cousin marriages to preserve their vast empire, creating a genetic quagmire where tragedy was commonplace. Of Marie-Louise's 12 siblings, only 7 reached adulthood, a testament to the toll of their compressed lineage. Genetically, Marie-Louise's ancestry was staggeringly constricted. Instead of the usual 8 unique great-grandparents, she had only 4, a level of inbreeding akin to that seen in isolated populations today. At 18, she was married to Napoleon Bonaparte, her father's former enemy, in a calculated bid to secure peace and produce an heir for the French Empire. The marriage was a political triumph, but a personal burden for Marie-Louise, who bore the weight of an empire's expectations at a young age. Her son, Napoleon II, survived, but the genetic risks of her lineage lingered. Marie-Louise's life was marked by duty, not joy, as she navigated the collapse of Napoleon's empire and her own remarriage to a lesser noble. Her story underscores the Habsburgs' relentless pursuit of power through bloodline purity, a strategy that left their descendants, like Marie-Louise, to bear the consequences. 10. Isabella II of Spain, a queen ensnared by blood. Isabella II of Spain 1830-1904, reigned 1833 to 1868, entered a world where her birth was both a triumph and a tragedy. Her father, King Ferdinand VII, had longed for a male heir, but after multiple failed pregnancies, Isabella's arrival as a daughter was reluctantly celebrated. However, the shadow of her family's genetic entanglements loomed large. Isabella was the product of a marriage between Ferdinand and his niece, Maria Cristina of the Two Sicilies, a union that wove an already intricate web of Habsburg and Bourbon lineage even tighter. Her pedigree was a labyrinth. Her paternal grandparents were also her maternal great-grandparents, creating a genetic bottleneck that manifested in fragile health for Isabella and her sister Luisa Fernanda. From childhood, whispers about their physical and mental vulnerabilities circulated among courtiers. At 16, Isabella was married to her double second cousin, Francis, Duke of Cadiz, a match orchestrated to strengthen political alliances, but doomed by genetic proximity. The couple bore 11 children, yet only 5 survived infancy, grim statistic likely tied to the compounded effects of inbreeding. Complicating matters, historians widely believe Francis fathered none of Isabella's surviving children, as their marriage was strained by his rumored homosexuality and political tensions. Isabella's extramarital affairs, a poorly kept secret, further muddied the royal lineage. Her reign was turbulent, marked by political instability, civil strife, and the Carlist Wars, culminating in her deposition in 1868. Isabella's legacy is not one of grandeur but of a queen ensnared by her family's genetic and political traps, a poignant symbol of the human cost of dynastic ambition. Conclusion: the enduring cost of bloodline purity. From the divine courts of ancient Egypt to the isolated communities of the modern world, the pursuit of bloodline purity has left an indelible mark on history. The stories of Cleopatra II, Kimberly Colt, Mummies 317A and 317B, Maria Antonia, Alexia of Greece, Marie-Louise Elizabeth, Maria I, Lorraine Whitaker, Marie-Louise of Austria, and Isabella II spend centuries in continents, yet they share a common thread: the devastating consequences of inbreeding. Whether driven by royal ambition to consolidate power or by the isolation of marginalized communities, these women's lives reveal the profound interplay of biology and destiny. Their stories, marked by resilience in the face of tragedy, serve as a sobering reminder that the pursuit of purity, power, and legacy can exact a profound human cost. shaping history in ways both visible and invisible.